In February 1957, the deep winter woods of the Fox Chase neighborhood in Philadelphia held a grim secret. A young man checking his rabbit traps stumbled upon the body of a 4-year-old boy. He was nude, severely malnourished, and covered in bruises from head to toe. Yet, in stark contrast to the brutal beatings he had endured, the child had been carefully attended to shortly before he was discarded. His hair was freshly cropped, and his fingernails were neatly trimmed. He had been wrapped tightly in a cheap plaid blanket and stuffed inside a cardboard box, one that had originally been used to ship a Penney bassinet. Despite the intimate care given to the child and the extreme brutality of his death, days passed in absolute silence. No parents reported a missing son, no neighbors called the police, and no relatives stepped forward, instantly isolating the case as a complete anomaly. The Philadelphia Police Department launched an immediate, massive organizational response to identify the victim. 270 police academy recruits were dispatched to the crime scene, forming long lines to comb through the winter underbrush again and again. They found a handful of scattered items in the dirt, a child's scarf and a white handkerchief with the letter G stitched into the corner. Detectives also recovered a man's blue corduroy cap, hoping to trace it back to a specific owner. When the physical evidence led nowhere, the city initiated a massive public awareness campaign. The local newspaper printed 400,000 flyers bearing the boy's likeness, and the city mailed one out with every single gas bill in Philadelphia. Law enforcement had executed the largest localized physical search in the city's history, pulling every available analog lever. Still, they generated 0 actionable leads, leaving the victim known only as America's unknown child. With the physical clues entirely exhausted, investigators had no choice but to rely on human memory, chasing down unverified hearsay and circumstantial theories. One prominent lead originated from a local psychic who directed an investigator to a nearby foster home. There, detectives found blankets hanging on a clothesline that resembled the one wrapped around the victim, as well as a bassinet similar to the one sold in the Penney box. But when police audited the home, every single foster child was accounted for. Decades later, investigators re-interviewed the family and completely ruled them out. Years later, in 2002, a woman known to police only as Martha came forward with a horrifying story. She claimed her parents had purchased the boy in 1954, subjected him to severe abuse, and eventually killed him. Detectives found her detailed account plausible, but her documented history of mental illness and a lack of corroborating witnesses meant her story couldn't be verified. Without objective scientific tools to verify these claims, the investigation spent decades stalled by leads that ultimately went nowhere. Modern forensic science began to change the trajectory of the case in 1998, starting with an exhumation to extract a DNA sample from the boy's tooth. However, late 90s sequencing technology wasn't advanced enough to pinpoint an identity. It took another 21 years before the body was exhumed a second time in 2019 to retrieve a more robust genetic sample. Genetic genealogy finally identified the victim. By comparing his DNA against public databases, genealogists mapped shared ancestors to a distant cousin. Working backward through the family tree, investigators located a first cousin, encouraging her to submit her profile to GED Match. That specific genetic match gave detectives the exact leverage they needed. They secured a court order to unseal a highly specific birth certificate, which was then strictly verified against the DNA. On December 8, 2022, Philadelphia police announced the results. The boy in the box was Joseph Augustus Zarelli. His biological parents were Augustus John Zarelli and Mary Elizabeth Plunkett. A microscopic digital search through a genealogy database accomplished in a matter of years what hundreds of thousands of physical flyers and decades of foot patrols could not achieve in 65 years. For decades, Joseph had been buried in a potter's field, his grave marked only by a blank, weathered white headstone. In 1998, his remains were transferred to Ivy Hill Cemetery, placed beneath a large stone bearing the title America's Unknown Child. On what would have been his 70th birthday in January 2023, a new memorial was unveiled, finally displaying his true name and his face. Today, the investigation is no longer about who the boy was, but who killed him. Joseph Zarelli has a name, and his death is once again a live homicide case. But identifying Joseph Augustus Zarelli did not reveal who beat him to death. Police confirmed that both of his biological parents are deceased, though the child does have living half-siblings. Investigators also possess a highly specific geographic lead. They know Joseph lived well past his 4th birthday in West Philadelphia, near the intersections of 61st and Market, or 64th and Callowhill Streets. Modern science has exhausted its reach by giving Joseph his name back. Closing this final chapter relies entirely on the fading human memory of anyone who lived in that neighborhood in the winter of 1957.